The wrestling business is more profitable than it's ever been, but the wrestlers themselves are about as irrelevant and uncool in a mainstream sense as they've ever been. Here in this video today, Bonafide Heat and myself are going to deep dive into it, have a bit of fun, rant about some wrestlers, all this kind of stuff. So without further ado, I'll throw this over to you, Kevin. Just look, wrestlers aren't nearly as mainstream as they used to be. Let's start giving examples, okay? Let's do it.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that attests to this, this fact, not a fact, but this theory, is WWE. They've shifted their business model from the NBA, where the NBA they promote their stars as the face of the brand. And the WWE used to do that in the 80s and 90s with Hogan and Stone Cold and The Rock, but now they take more of the NFL approach. The WWE is the brand, so nobody really knows who these wrestlers are anymore. You walk up and down the street, people don't know who The Miz is. They don't know who Drew McIntyre is even, the WWE champion. I know it might offend some of you, but if you go out in the real world and you do a survey and you stop 10 people on the street and you ask them who Drew McIntyre is, and then you ask them who The Undertaker is, chances are more people are going to know who The Undertaker is than Drew McIntyre. Oh, let's just be real.
What do you mean chances are? Of course more people know The Undertaker. And it's like, you think of pretty much anyone. I know a lot of wrestling fans nowadays, they almost live in a bubble of sorts, especially on the wrestling Twitters you see. But people by and large don't, we'll use Bad Bunny for example. People just by and large in the wrestling community had no clue who Bad Bunny was, and in their opinion, instead of Bad Bunny being some big celebrity that he objectively is, instead Sami Zayn or God, it's take your pick, Shingo Takagi in Japan, all these type of guys are more famous just because in their opinion they are. When in reality, as you say there, you ask 100 people on the street, who is Shingo Takagi? Maybe one person might know who it is, but you ask 100 people who Bad Bunny is, especially in some places, you get upwards of probably 70, 80 people saying, oh yeah, that's the artist, the musician.
Where I live in Miami, everybody, you ask 100 people, 99 people are going to know who Bad Bunny is.
Exactly.
You walk down the street, all you hear is Bad Bunny's music. And yeah, that's territorial, geographical, whatever.
Yeah.
But still, Bad Bunny in the United States and on the Western Hemisphere as a whole, he's got 35 million Instagram followers, 10 million Twitter followers. You can't even deny that the dude isn't famous.
Yeah.
He's the most streamed artist on Spotify. Out of all the big artists in the world, a Latin rapper is number one now.
Yeah. And you think about the wrestlers of today. I mean, we've talked about this in plenty of videos. Wrestlers of the past, Undertaker, Edge, I mean, you name them, Hogan, Austin. These are the wrestlers that when adults at work are doing whatever, these are the wrestlers that are brought up in conversation. I used to watch wrestling, the WWE. I remember Jake Roberts doing this to Randy Savage, all this kind of stuff. Nowadays, as you've talked about, WWE is the brand. And because of how they write the shows, no one feels larger than life or overly special. I mean, Reigns kind of does now, but you look at who he's working with, and it's it's disappointing.
Yeah, exactly. And you brought up how about people remember Macho Man and Jake Roberts. Back in the day, in the 90s and the 80s, Macho Man would do big time talk shows, the Arsenio Hall show or whoever was big at that point. David Letterman, whoever. Now you will never see a wrestler on Jimmy Kimmel. The only wrestler you will see on Jimmy Kimmel is John Cena.
Yep.
Or The Rock. Literally not even Roman Reigns would be on Jimmy Kimmel. The Undertaker probably, because The Undertaker is larger than life. But you would never see The Miz on Jimmy Kimmel. I know I'm picking on The Miz, but I'll use a better example. The WWE champion, Drew McIntyre. You will not even see him on Jimmy Kimmel. You might see him on Good Morning Today, but the way they promote it is this is WWE. This is the WWE champion here, not this is Drew McIntyre. This is the WWE champion.
Yeah, exactly.
The WWE is the presiding brand.
Yeah, and
they're famous. Drew McIntyre is famous. I'm not saying he's not famous. People know who Drew McIntyre is. A large amount of people know who he is because WWE is such a global brand. But it's just not, like you said, cooler talk. There's nobody at work going, oh, did you see what Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton did last night? No, they're talking about the Super Bowl. They're talking about MMA. They're talking about, oh, did you see Conor McGregor? He got knocked out. That's what people are talking about nowadays.
No, but no one's having the conversation with their friends at work as they're they're doing tradesman work and like they're building some house or something, and they've got all the tools, and they're standing around before they get to the job saying, "Oh, did you see that great match Drew McIntyre had with John Morrison last night on Raw?" Like, no one says this. Like nowadays, those aren't the conversations of casuals and non-wrestling fans. Because back in the day, when you'd have Randy Savage, Jake Roberts, oh, did you see the Mega Powers explode at SummerSlam? Oh, geez, I can't wait to see what happens next. Like, that's the kind of conversation you'd have. And also, one thing I want to talk about now, I want to bring this up. Cena is a very interesting one because you mentioned him there. He's like the last guy who you'll see is like on Jimmy Kimmel, on Jimmy Fallon, on these like late night shows, on James Corden. He's like the last like WWE superstar, even though nowadays he's like a Hollywood star. He's the last guy who would go on those shows and be like, "Oh yeah, that's the WWE guy, Cena." But like one thing about Cena I want to talk about, I'll get your opinion on this now. Do you feel like in WWE creating the Cena superstar that they drove away the majority of just like the not mainstream fans, but the 18 to 49 like males who made wrestling famous? Do you feel like?
I think that goes without question.
Yeah.
What WWE did was they created this character in John Cena, and they brought in families, they brought in children, and they just like they created like this rinse, wash, repeat cycle where once a kid was like when you're like 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, you love John Cena. Then by the time you hit middle school, you're like, I don't watch wrestling anymore, and it just kept going. The WWE just kept reproducing those fans, and then like once you hit 13, 14, you're like, I used to watch wrestling when I was like 8. Now I don't watch wrestling anymore. Like I know John Cena and Randy Orton because I used to watch.
Yeah.
But now I don't watch anymore. And yeah, so like a lot of people, then a lot of the hardcore Attitude Era fans, they watch like maybe they watch like Twitter clips and Facebook clips of like what's going on in the show, but they're not regularly tuned in anymore.
Exactly. And like I think of Tyrone Magnus as an example, like big reaction channel, like middle-aged type guy, or he's like 30 or whatever, and used to be like you can tell just a hardcore wrestling fan, like the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, like loved it then. And then the Cena thing happened, and then Cena's getting pushed as this like big star to where all these like 18 to mainly like 34 males who make up your wrestling audience, who were the bulk of your Attitude Era audience when wrestling was the coolest it ever was. Like that audience gets driven away because the guy who the company WWE is pushing down your throats is someone who is liked by little kids, but that's really about it, and like families, and that's like it. So, like, the wrestling audience who talk about wrestling at work, like, they don't watch wrestling anymore. They've been gone for 10, 15 years because of how they push Cena. And now you're left with this audience of, you've got some families, you've got some hardcore, online wrestling fans who love watching 46-minute, 5-star Dave Meltzer matches. And you've got just a bunch of I won't use the word weirdos, just a bunch of, like, randoms who watch wrestling for their own personal agendas almost. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. Like people, they watch wrestling nowadays, and they're just like, they like it because they like it. That's it. Like that's the one thing they love. And nowadays, everything's so niche. It's like you have to cling on to one thing that you love. And a lot of people have really clinged on to wrestling, and that coincides with like anime and like goth music. Like they're all kind of like mixed in together. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you see that with AEW fans, I find as well, because AEW, like nowadays, wrestling for the second half of the 2010s especially, so uncool. Like you've seen the wrestling ratings, because WWE, I like to think of it, they lived on the Attitude Era and like the success of that era for about 15 years. And then you got to around 2015, Cena started to fade out and become a part-timer and go away. And then really you've seen the ratings ever since then. They were getting fours. I remember the Raw after WrestleMania 31 got like 5 million viewers. And then ever since then, Cena's kind of gone away and the ratings have just gone down. And now they're getting like 1.6 million every week for Raw. And like...
it's good. It's a good point that you brought up WrestleMania 31. I'm sorry to stop you, but...
Yeah.
You have this big, massive angle, a star-making angle where Seth Rollins on the biggest stage, like that had to be like I think that's the most viewed WrestleMania of the last like 6 years, if I'm not wrong, if I'm correct. You have like the biggest audience you've had in a long time. You have Seth Rollins cash in on Brock Lesnar and win the World Championship, and then they fumbled it away. Like they literally like they did it to themselves. They killed Rollins by making him so uninteresting. Just like a chicken shit, like he was like the epitome, the king of chicken shit heels, and they had a really big opportunity to build a star in Seth Rollins, and it didn't work out.
Well, like, I mean, when it comes to Rollins, I think of that. There's a lot of revisionist history that Seth Rollins' reign. Like people like nowadays, the wrestling fans left 6 years down the line. Look at that Rollins WWE title run coming out of WrestleMania 31. They look at that as like a great reign because he had great matches with Cena at
Yeah.
SummerSlam. He had great matches with like Ambrose at Money in the Bank from memory, and he had like good matches. But like the whole point is that at the time, Seth Rollins on the most watched WrestleMania, like a WrestleMania, Triple H versus Sting, Brock versus Roman Reigns. You've got all these like big matches, like even Orton versus Seth Rollins. Hell, like you got all these matches, like The Rock and Ronda Rousey had a segment, like this big mainstream WrestleMania. Rollins closes it out, and then what they do to follow that up for the next 6 months is have Rollins hiding behind Joey Mercury and Jamie Noble. He's groveling to shirtless Authority Kane. Big Show is helping him out every match. Like, they just ruin it, you know? It's so disappointing.
Remember Brock Lesnar threw a car at somebody when they did their
Yeah, he
rematch?
nearly killed some child with a car door. Yeah, I remember that. Like,
And then like they didn't even give Rollins a credible win over Brock. They had Undertaker interfere, right? Was that when
yep,
Undertaker interfered and finally got his revenge for losing the streak?
yep.
It was like Undertaker didn't care about the streak. And then all of a sudden you got a chance to build Seth Rollins and give him a clean win over Brock. Vince was like, "Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll have Undertaker randomly get his revenge, and then we'll just, we'll make the Undertaker and Brock Lesnar more important than our championship."
Yeah, and it just goes back to the whole point we're trying to make. Ever since wrestling's last mainstream star, Cena, who in and of himself was made pretty terribly as far as will drive away all the wrestling fans who have made like our product relevant, like work and like all the adults, will drive them away just to make Cena. And now that we've had Cena be our star for the last decade, he's starting to become part-time, he's going away. Well now what's left? Now we're gonna, like, in the last 5 years, the mentality with WWE, with Triple H and Stephanie and all this kind of stuff, it's been, let's push these guys that the hardcore fans who are going to watch us anyway are going to enjoy. Let's push agendas so that these networks and these people who don't even care about us at all are going to promote us, like Stephanie McMahon doing the women's first time evers in Saudi Arabia just to get a headline on ESPN. Like, that's the kind of thing wrestling's been nowadays. And it goes, as you said initially, WWE is the brand. Like, anything to make WWE the brand seem better in the mainstream, like that's where it's at. Not the superstars, Kevin. Just WWE is the brand.
And I guess we have to mention this too. In fairness, the Chris Benoit thing really like kind of pushed that agenda.
Oh, that yeah.
Because
Sure.
like wrestlers, not wrestling, wrestlers had a terrible stigma in the mainstream media. Like the mainstream media was out to kill the credibility of pro wrestlers. Like that was it. When Benoit did what he did, it was like, oh, all wrestlers were on steroids. Like I remember watching this segment where like I don't know who it was, some talk show host pretty much blamed.
Nancy Grace, was it?
Yes, Nancy Grace.
Yep.
She blamed Owen Hart's death on steroids, and I'm like, bro, like you can't even like what? Like God, it was just like they were in damage control, and now I think we're far enough removed now where it's like WWE is still living on the Attitude Era, but they don't really have to. Like they got $1 billion deal somehow from Fox, and Saudi Arabia gave them hundreds of millions. I don't know how they get all these deals.
Well,
I don't understand.
You talked about this in your the video you made when WWE signed the Peacock deal. It's more so just like a mass surplus of content. Like the WWE is a content machine. You have 3 hours of Raw every week, 2 hours of SmackDown, 2 hours of NXT, main event. You've got the 205 Live. You've got these random like indie tournaments, like these UK tournaments, NXT UK, pay-per-views. There's like one every like 3 weeks now. Like there's a superstar spectacle. Like WWE is a content machine, and that's all they are. They're as Punk said, they're a wheel. They just keep turning, keep turning, keep turning. That's what WWE is. They're not about, oh, let's make a superstar. Let's make Steve Austin into a mainstream star. Let's make these guys. Like that's not how they think anymore. Like,
Exactly. So let's talk about the roster today.
yep.
Like you said, Roman Reigns is probably the most famous guy on the roster right now. But even still, like maybe some people, like maybe 6 out of 10, I think that's fair. Maybe 6 out of 10 people will know who Roman Reigns is, or 60 out of 100 if you ask them on the street, or if you show them a picture of him. They might, but they won't know him and be like, oh yeah, that's Roman Reigns, the wrestler. Like they might have to see a picture of him, and they'll be like, oh, I think that guy's from WWE, or he's related to The Rock or something.
Yeah.
But then you show them a picture of Stone Cold, and they're like, oh my god, that's Stone Cold.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, and even this too, Stone Cold isn't even that mainstream anymore. Like The Rock, people know The Rock as a movie star. Some people don't even know The Rock was a wrestler. It's insane. It's mind boggling.
Literally. And it's like, well, you're in a day and age now where relevancy is like all people care about, and what you've done lately is like all that matters. So when The Rock is doing these massive business deals, he's got all his Project Rock branding, he's like tequila, he's everywhere, he's in these big action movies. The Rock is relevant, everyone knows who Dwayne The Rock Johnson is. But then you've got Steve Austin, who, he's much like the WWE. Stone Cold Steve Austin, he lives off what happened 20 years ago. And in that regard, yes, straight up Steve Austin's a great show, and more often than not, it's more entertaining than Raw. Well, it is. But in reality, even Austin nowadays, when Austin comes on Raw, the ratings don't go up by 2-3 million viewers like you think they should. Because Austin hasn't really...
Only if he was wrestling. If he came back to wrestle, the ratings would go through the roof. Guaranteed.
Yeah, for sure. But also, well, at the same time, this goes back to the kind of point of the video. It depends who he's wrestling. Like, this is the whole thing with your Bad Bunny point. Like, I'll let you make the Bad Bunny point now, if you want.
Yeah, so that's like if Stone Cold came back and it was like, oh, we're going to do Stone Cold versus Sami Zayn, and everybody would be like, oh my God, Stone Cold's coming back. And then they would be like, who is this guy that he's wrestling? Why isn't he wrestling John Cena or Brock Lesnar? Why is he wrestling this homeless guy? And then it would lose all its momentum. It's just like with Bad Bunny. You have like one of the 5 or 6 most famous musicians in the world. And you bring him in, and you would think, okay, Randy Orton's going to RKO Bad Bunny, or Roman Reigns is going to beat him up, or Drew McIntyre is going to Claymore kick him, or something. Somebody that looks like a star, like Brock Lesnar is going to come beat up Bad Bunny. Or even like when Kevin Owens beat up Machine Gun Kelly. That was cool because Kevin Owens is kind of cool. But you put him in there with The Miz, and like I'm getting texts from people that are like, who is this guy that Bad Bunny, like why did Bad Bunny come to WWE? And he's working with this guy I never heard of.
Yeah.
Like you got him standing there with Booker T. Booker T is cool. Why not have him play Booker T down to the ring and have Booker T make an appearance in the Royal Rumble and have him just like walk down to the ring with Booker T or something? I don't know. You put him in there with The Miz and like it loses all of its momentum instantly.
Well, yeah, because like you think if Austin came back nowadays, he'd be a special guest on Miz TV, and Morrison and Miz would be standing there dressed as like gender confused Jedis, trying to make fun, like G-rated jokes about Austin. Then Austin would like stun them, and then they'd build up to, I don't know, Austin versus Miz at a match. Like that's the problem nowadays, and that's what WWE just, it's an epidemic. Like there's no one really left who can make these returning stars have a truly like compelling match. I feel like.
Randy Orton. Randy Orton's the only guy. Like Randy Orton RKO's Bad Bunny, that's going viral.
Exactly.
That's going on TMZ. That's going on YouTube. That's going everywhere. You're gonna see that clip everywhere. As much as like I don't really like Randy Orton, I can't deny the fact that Randy Orton RKOing Bad Bunny is the biggest thing they could have done with him.
Legit. Picture this. They have Bad Bunny plays Booker T down to the ring or whatever. Then, I don't know when this would happen, maybe on Raw the next night after the Rumble. You have Randy Orton, he gets like laid out. You have Damian Priest be like, hit a splash. So Bad Bunny climbs the top rope, goes for a splash from Randy Orton. Orton pops up, RKO. Similar to the Evan Bourne one like 11 years ago. And then it's just this mainstream TMZ, ESPN. They're like, oh my God, look at this RKO out of nowhere on Bad Bunny. And it's like this super relevant thing. But
yeah, or you do this where Randy Orton comes down to the ring and he's like, Bad Bunny, who are you? And Bad Bunny walks down to the ring and he's like talking to Randy Orton in Spanish. And Randy Orton's like, I don't speak Spanish. And just RKOs him like the jabroni that he is.
yeah.
Like that would be freaking cool, bro.
But no, instead he's having promo back and forths with Morrison. And
yeah, the Morrison's like a white guy speaking Spanish, and it's like, all right, whatever. And then the Miz is like, oh, I'm a bigger star than you, Bad Bunny. So then now you have these idiots that think wrestling is real on Twitter saying, oh, the Miz is more famous than Bad Bunny. He said it.
And then, like, also, you look at Miz there. Look what happened on Raw last night. Like, this is in, like, a wrestling, fraternity. The Miz is supposedly this big mainstream star, if you listen to Twitter especially. Oh, the Miz has Miz and Misses. The Miz is in movies. Like the Miz is so famous. And then you look at Edge, someone who, by and large, pretty much every wrestling fan, like, ever knows. Like, this is Edge. This is the star of the Ruthless Aggression era, pretty much.
This is the guy that had the highest rated segment in the history of wrestling with Lita.
Oh, it'd be up there, surely. And then you have Edge just completely destroy this guy on the mic, literally say, look, you've made a career being quote-unquote awesome, and look where that's got you. I have desire and passion for this, and everyone knows me, you're a nobody. That's literally what Edge told him. And, I mean, that sums up wrestling as a whole. Like, most of the wrestlers nowadays are content with being in WWE, being a part of the brand, being quote-unquote subjectively awesome, as opposed to really breaking apart and being a superstar in and of themselves, you know?
And here's my question for you. Where is Bad Bunny and Damian Priest when Edge is cutting the Miz to shreds? Like, why are they not dapping up Edge or like shaking his hand, or like why are they not out there with him getting a rub from Edge? Because yeah, Bad Bunny's famous. Everybody knows who Bad Bunny is. He's gonna bring mainstream attention, but you have to make him credible in the eyes of wrestling fans at the same time. And having him with Damian Priest, yeah, that's nice. That builds up Damian Priest. That gives Damian Priest a boost. But you got to do something with him and Edge at that moment, I think.
Well, why was Angel Garza in the ring, but Priest and Bunny weren't? Like, this stuff doesn't make sense. It just...
Yeah, you got Angel Garza out there because... What was
Garza
the reasoning for having Angel Garza out there?
What does
I don't even know.
What does he have to do with Miz and Mo? Like, it doesn't make sense.
He's Spanish. That's it. Vince is like, oh, he's Spanish. We'll put him out there with Bad Bunny.
I can't be bothered. I think, I don't know, we've been here 20 minutes. We've covered the main crux of the point. Basically, ever since WWE really made this pushing Cena thing a big deal and driving away most of the casual audience who can really make these wrestlers nowadays popular, if that makes sense, ever since then, we've had what mainstream stars? I mean, Reigns, if he's pictured next to The Rock, I guess you could say he's a star. And that's literally it. WWE is the brand. WWE is what the cool thing is.
But Seth Rollins has 4 million followers on Instagram. He's He's mainstream.
Oh, Finn Balor has 4 million Instagram followers. Like, oh wow, you put Finn Balor next to The Rock. Who are people going to know? Like, it's disappointing.
Yeah, you compare that to The Rock. The Rock is like 200 million Instagram followers. John Cena has like 20 million.
Yeah,
you compare that, and then you have Roman Reigns has like 5, and he's the most he doesn't even come close. Like, if you think about it in the Attitude Era, if social media was around in the Attitude Era, The Rock, Triple H, Stone Cold, they'd have like 30 million followers on their Instagram pages and their Facebook pages. Yeah, it'd be ridiculous.
You'd have here are the 10 most liked Instagram influencers or people in the world today. And if Instagram's around during the Attitude Era, you'd have like Rock at 1. You'd have a couple of celebrities from the time. Austin, Triple H would be like 8th. Like that's what it would be. But now, but Balor has 4 million Instagram followers. Like, great. Is that doing anything for NXT's ratings? I ask you that. Like,
no, not at all. People don't even know who Finn Balor is.
Because a bunch of 8-year-olds followed his account 4 years ago because the Demon was cool. Now all of a sudden he's a massive draw because he has 4 million Instagram followers. It doesn't work that way. It just nah.
Yeah, you put Finn Balor on the main event of WrestleMania. Like, Peacock is going to be like, bro, we got to renege this deal.
But the match would be really good. The match would be really good, Kevin. Balor versus Edge, Kevin.
Yeah, you have Finn Balor go up there, get his rematch for the Universal title that he still hasn't gotten in 6 years. Do Finn Balor versus Roman Reigns, title for title. Yeah, Peacock will literally call Vince and just like, I'm sorry, this deal ain't going to work out. Like, yeah, we don't want your network anymore.
Oh, jeez.
Who's gonna go? Oh, I have to go sign up for Peacock to watch Finn Balor versus Roman Reigns.
And that's the problem, like, because people nowadays, especially, like, most of the wrestling fans left, as we said earlier, watch wrestling for like their own agendas and because they have like a passion for wrestling or watching like matches or whatever. Like, these people just want to see another great match. And I'm just like, there have been thousands of great matches over wrestling history. What you should, and yeah, I'm going to tell you what you should want. What you should want is a really captivating story that's going to make casual mainstream fans care. That way, you're less uncool for liking wrestling. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yes, it does.
But apparently that is too far for these people. These people just want to see a great match. How dare I, or how dare you, Kevin, not want to see Balor versus Edge? Balor versus Edge would be a great match in the ring. Even though Edge would probably be in the hospital afterwards, so would Balor, because they're headbutting each other's collarbones. Forget that. Forget the great match. But like, you need to see. That's what you should want to see, because the match would be better. Like this is the whole problem.
Yeah. Exactly. And I'll close by saying this.
Yep.
Any adult listening to this, I'm talking strictly to the adults, and you don't know who Bad Bunny is, but you think The Miz is more famous than Bad Bunny, go outside, go to a club, go. You'll hear a Bad Bunny song as soon as you walk into a club. It might even get you. You might even hook up with a chick because you know how to dance to Bad Bunny. So go outside once in a while.
Too true. So that's been the video. I think you guys take the point. We've been here for about 25 minutes now, just destroying like how WWE wrestlers aren't mainstream. Like, the brand is mainstream. It's not cool, but it's mainstream and still gets deals. And that's really about it. So, yeah, that being said, like, comment, sub. You guys know the drill. See ya.